New York Dan here for the Ben's Products and Life Hack channels. I have been covering the Titan submersible sub. I did a live cast and a video on it when it was happening. I've geeked out on it, so to speak, you may say. Now, just the other day, I was watching on YouTube. A guy he posted a alleged communication log between the Titan and the mothership Polar Prince. And this log worked, the text communication seemed to have worked almost the whole way down to Titanic. They were still in communication with the submersible. Now, this contradicts some of the earlier reports when I covered this, where the text communication was limited. It had to be right under Polar Prince, and it would only be able to go down a certain depth before it would lose communication. However, when I went through the log, I listened to everything that they were saying. It seems very plausible. It doesn't seem to me to be any kind of anything in this log that is kind of a stretch or embellished. Like if it was a fake log, perhaps you would find stuff that wasn't accurate in it. And I think this may in fact be legit. Of course, they're not going to release this to the public until they do an investigation that could go on for who knows how long, a year or more, on this sub. But based on this log, it dawned on me that there was another problem, not to do with the actual composite hull of the sub. And when they were going down, and we're going to look at the whole log right here so you can see the whole thing that I'm talking about. When they were going down, there is a system on board the sub that listens acoustically for any kind of noises. And the theory is that if the hull is being compromised, or it's like it's flexing or moving too much, it will start to make noises before it will collapse. Now, the guy that ran this expedition, the CEO of the company, Stockton Rush, this guy was a real go-getter. Like, a lot of people are saying he put safety on the back burner and wanted to just make this happen, so to speak. He talked about this system, and he claimed that when you start hearing any kind of noises from the hull, a compromise in the hull, you would have plenty of time to get the sub up to the surface. So his system, according to this text log, they did have this special system give a danger warning. It detected some noises in the hull or in the sub when it was well into its journey down to the bottom, almost down to where Titanic, almost down to the depths of Titanic. Now, I'm going to go into this, and I'm going to show you this log, and I'm going to talk about this whole theory right now. But I just wanted to say, the whole problem with these guys going down on this sub, a lot of people now, if you observe this, things are what I call black boxed, where the public doesn't know what's going on inside, what's the mechanical, how things work, the technical details. And this is going on with society just about like with everything. Most people are not questioning any kind of technical aspects of what they're using in their life. Even if you look at car commercials, the commercials have been what I call almost stupefied. They show the car and they like to show something silly or somebody driving the car, maybe something outrageous. And these commercials are downright goofy. The way that they're doing, the way that they're trying to sell you stuff now. They sell you it based on goofiness. And I think that the whole like way society's going, you have this whole society that's like black boxed where they throw things out. They don't know how anything works. And with technology, this is very scary. A lot of things can't be repaired. In this microchip era, you just throw the stuff out if it goes bad. There's no way to service it. You used to have like a television repair, TV, VCR repair, stereo repair. That's kind of going by the wayside. Now everything, it's black boxed. It comes in the unit doesn't work, you throw it out. Well, my point being is, with something like this sub, the people that went on this, a lot of them, well, let's be real, they have to be extremely rich and wealthy to go on this. It costs $250,000 for this expedition. Now, they've seen stuff on TV like Titanic with Dr. Ballard, where he went down there. He was using a Navy submersible that was rated to go down something like 20,000 feet. It was a completely round shape called a bell, somewhat like a ball. That's the shape of it. That shape is much, much stronger than any kind of tubular shape. Well, long story short, people now, these tourists that want to go on this thing, what they do essentially is they're black boxing it. They're saying, oh, well, Ballard went down on a sub just like this to go see Titanic. This company is providing a sub to go down there. It's high tech. In this world we live in, everybody thinks high tech is like so radical or the answer. Let's just go on this thing. We don't have anything to worry about. People do the same thing with airplanes. They go on these planes and they don't realize how all the technical aspects behind going on an airplane. And a lot of this stuff is similar to going on a sub. When you go on an airplane, the cabin is pressurized. The pressure is pushing out on the cabin. If you lose that air pressure, people will pass out in the plane. You will not be able to get enough oxygen. It goes up to over 35,000 feet. So the structure of the plane has to be very strong, and it's built similar to what a submarine structure would have to be. Now, a submarine is many times higher pressure it has to endure because the water weighs so much. And it's just crazy how the people trust this guy to take them down. They don't do their homework. They probably didn't know until this happened. Nobody knew about any of the details of this sub. They were just like, oh, it's high tech. Things electronic, black boxed. We go in the sub, takes us down there. They probably did not do their homework. When you're down at those depths, the pressure is around 6,000 pounds per square inch. To give you an example, Mercedes-Benz, which I do a lot of videos on my Benz products, they have a diesel fuel injector, right? And in the 1980s, when they came out with turbo diesel, they increased the pressure that their injectors fired at. The non-turbo engines, I believe they were only like maybe around 1,200 pounds, 1,300. The turbo diesel had a very high pressure at the time, close to 1,900 pounds per square inch before the diesel fuel sprayed out of the injector. if you put your hand or your fingers, anything in front of that spray, it was so high pressured that it would actually go into your body, the fuel, and it could cause you to have a real problem. It could be deadly if you had enough fuel went in. So that kind of pressure, that's just putting your hand near the injector when it fired, or any body part. This Titan was down at depths where there's 6,000 psi. That's almost 3 times the pressure that the diesel injectors fire at. So you can tell, and the hole on the diesel injector is like a microscopic pinpoint. If you like look at it, how tiny the hole is that the fuel comes out. So yeah, this stuff is very, I don't think anyone did their homework. They were black boxing it, because this is a dangerous journey. Even if you're in a Navy submersible like Dr. Ballard did when he first found Titanic, this is nothing to take lightly. Going down to depths where you have that kind of pressure. Now, let's go over to the web here. I'm going to show you some of the stuff I found and explain what I think led to this whole problem. This is the actual chat log, the communication from the sub. Unofficial. Where I'm getting this, a YouTuber, Jeffo Strofe, if I'm not butchering his name, he found this chat log, and I believe, well, the stuff in the chat log seems plausible. This guy got a lot of views on here. He has over 400,000 subscribers, where it is plausible that he may have gotten the actual chat log, and this is something that wouldn't be released for a long time. There was also talk that some people close to the sub operations, like Cameron, he knew about this, kind of what happened before the public when they were still searching for the sub. It kind of seemed like they had the chat log already. That's what this guy was claiming on his channel. He was reading about that. So here's the deal. First, he notes that they're going down very fast. The sub communicated reducing velocity, descent depth 3,433. This YouTuber calculated it out based on the information about Titan, and the depth should have only been around 2,229 meters. Instead, they were at 3,433 meters, 1,200 meters deeper than expected. This puts them 1 hour early getting to the wreck site, about 400 meters from the Titanic site. So they're way down at this point. They're getting very close to the Titanic. Usually these expeditions, when I covered this earlier the other week as it was happening, I remember they were saying it's usually an 8-hour ordeal, where it takes around 2.5 hours or so to get down there. They go down slower, and then when they ascend, it takes a couple hours to get back up. So they're going down super fast, and this is one of the data points that caught my eye. This, to me, is a clue. This gives me a big clue as to what possibly may have caused this whole disaster. I'm going to get to that in a minute. These are some of the pictures inside the sub. Now, if they could see Titanic, it would have looked like this. However, keep in mind it's pitch black down there, and they would have to put on lighting and have clear water visibility to see this. But this is about how close they were to Titanic when they started having serious problems with the sub. Now they start running into a problem. Before, Stockton Rush was kind of just like glossing over the faster rate of descent down to the Titanic. Maybe he didn't think it was serious. And what happened was they had what's called an RTM sensor alert that happened. The RTM stands for real-time monitoring. And this is that system I was talking about in the beginning of the video that listens acoustically with a microphone system or sensors. And the theory is that the hull will give off acoustic warnings, sound warnings, well before the structure would implode, well before it would totally fail. So they have an alert from this RTM system, and I'll tell you what, the people on board must have been terrified. I don't know if they could hear Stockton Rush and the crew of the sub relaying these messages, or were these guys just typing them and trying to just keep everything calm, and they may have been saying, oh, just routine lights, routine signals, because this is all done by text communication. So the RTM sensor had gone off, and when this happens, you would want to ascend or get to the surface ASAP. As soon as possible, get back up. This is a major problem. It's a major emergency. You don't take chances with this. If this real-time monitoring goes off. Okay, so the Polar Prince, they had just communicated with them. We have some RTM alerts. Top, which is Polar Prince, says, understood, do you need to ascend? The sub says, no change with thrust. The rate of descent is increasing at 35. Going to release ballast now. Okay, now what was going on, this is very strange. At this point, I believe they were trying to operate these thrusters, which are on the side of the sub. You can see one here and one up here. Normally these thrusters, my understanding of it is, they can use battery power with these thrusters and regulate possibly some ballast tanks that contain water to go up and down to make the ascent and the descent. So what they did is they tried using the electric motors, and they're trying to get back to the surface. Maybe they released the normal amount of ballast weight, and now they've really got a problem because they say no change with thrust rate, and the descent is increasing at 35. That must be the 3,500 meters. Going to release ballast now. The top, Polar Prince, relays, yes, agree, release the ballast. So then the sub says, no improvement, preparing to jettison the frame. So there are ballast weights along this frame that I've seen. I don't know if those are separate from the ballast that they can release, but in any event, this frame probably weighs a certain amount. And what they're talking about is dropping off this entire frame of the sub. The top, Polar Prince says, affirmative, update when able, indicator, oh, they want to know the RTM indicator status. And then the sub replies, frame jettisoned, multiple attempts needed, but starting the ascent now. Now this is very strange. Right here, this caught my eye. Why you would have to jettison the frame just to get this thing to start ascending. This is a serious problem here. It's not normal operation of the sub. The frame costs a lot of money to build and make. They don't normally jettison the frame, from my understanding of it. The sub should be able to go up on its own. Okay, here we go. The top replies, they're kind of astounded as to what's going on with it. They say multiple attempts with a question mark. What is your status? RTM indicators depth. Please, when able, to update. Okay, the sub replies, cracking sound at aft. Now, if you don't know about boats or subs, the aft would be the rear. So in the rear of the sub, they hear a crackling sound. Polar Prince says, can you identify the source? And they still want to know what's going on with these RTM indicators. The sub just types back 3 letters, NEG, negative, for negative. They're under stress here, and they're having problems. They can't even answer the questions. It's like an emergency situation. Okay, the sub then replies, after that the Polar Prince wants to know the RTM status. They keep asking that. The sub says, trying to run diagnostics. Ascending now, but very slowly. Sounds have subsided. Global RTM alert active. All red. Now this is very bad news. This is bad news here. Why is it ascending so slowly? They do not have, they're not saying that there's water in the sub. It's not taking on any water. So the reason for the slow ascent must have something else. There must be something else causing this. Let's see if we can get to the next set. Where is it? Right here. And my birds are, they want to be talking as well. When I talk, they talk. They're going crazy over there. Okay, so the Polar Prince says, understood. Any codes? Depth? Ascent rate? The top says update when able, please. Further communication from the sub. It says slow ascent in progress. Quarter predicted. Unclear why rate is small. No indicator. At 3,476. Top. We are talking it over with the engineer. Stand by. The top says depth and status, please. What is the wattage on upward thrust? So you see they use those thrusters. That gives us a big clue. They use the thruster to help get the sub up. To help bring the thing up. Plus, they must have to release ballast as well. But like I said, it may be a water ballast system. That's how the old World War II subs worked. They would fill up tanks to make the thing heavier or less heavy, make it more buoyant. The motors alone can't do the whole thing. Those motors are pretty wimpy. Sub, reading red on the R power bus. Switch to B. I'm at 3,457 meters. More sounds aft. So they heard, when they switched over to the emergency power, the other power bank, they heard more crackling noises in the aft. This is what's going on. The noises had stopped before, from my understanding. And when they switched the batteries, they heard more noise. They also have only gone up about 20 meters, 30 meters, no, 20 meters exactly from the last communication. So they're barely ascending back to the surface. Something's going on here bad. Now let's see. I believe that's probably the end. And then there's probably, let's see here. What's going on with this video feed over YouTube is very slow now. Whatever's going on, this video is hard to get. Let's see if I can get it. That's weird. This should load up faster than that.
Velocity.
Here it is. Okay, so this is the communication from the Polar Prince. They say, understood, continue descent. Talking to Carlos about power bus situation right now. And then they say, we are activating recovery procedures. Carlos is requesting wattage output from bus B, status update, velocity of ascent. And then they just say, we're not receiving you update, please, status and depth report. So this is the last communication from them. Okay, for nearly 19 minutes the crew is in panic mode and trying to manage the emergency. This is what we have. Now, we don't know exactly when the implosion happened. You could theorize that it was most likely when the communication stopped, but being that they were having problems with their power system, it's also plausible that this may have happened a little bit later. Hopefully they were not down there, you know, in agony for a long time, because we really don't know when this implosion happened. The Navy picked up the sound of the implosion, they think, but nobody has actually said when. They actually have not lined up the times. Nobody has announced that. Maybe when we get the official report, they will line up when those two times came out. Okay, so this is what I want to talk about here. I did some research on this. I want to find out what is going on as far as how are these batteries made and what kind of battery power did this thing use. Now, this is inside the sub here, and you can see there's some electronics back here. Like, this looks more like computers in the back part of the sub. But keep in mind, in this pressurized compartment, they want the most passenger space possible. Now, the people are in a capsule that goes from here over to here. At the back here, what you don't see behind this part, this is more of like a facade or just like cosmetic. This capsule here has another one of these titanium metal caps that goes like this. And the humans are inside the capsule here. In the back of this, I assume there may be room for computers and whatnot. But this is my theory and what caught my eye. This thing has to be powered by batteries. And we all know the latest thing is with a lot of cars, all the battery powered cars, EVs, they're powered by lithium ion batteries. These batteries are a lot lighter and more compact than other battery technology. Now, this thing also has tanks for oxygen and other mechanical equipment. That's all in the back of the sub here. And I've tried to find this information, and it's damn near impossible, as to the actual design of this sub and the technical details. Because the guy kind of, you know, it's not like a commercially built item, that information's hard to find. what I am assuming is based on my knowledge of how this stuff would be built. You see, at the depths it's going down to, anything that you would take for granted as being like waterproof or being able to go underwater, like say a diving watch, we're sadly mistaken if you think you could bring a diving watch or something down here. A matter of fact, if you put a diving watch around this frame, the depths this thing went down to, your diving watch would implode. The lens would break, the whole case would get crushed. That's how tight, that's how much pressure there is down here. This back part of the sub, I'm assuming that this, I've seen holes here, and I've seen when it dove, there's been air bubbles coming out here. I'm assuming that this actually fills with water. And there's frames back here that hold air tanks and other things the sub needs. And what I'm assuming is the air tanks are massively built. They have to contain thousands of pounds of oxygen when it's on the surface. And because of this, and they're also cylindrical. Also, when you get smaller shapes, like a tank, an air tank, it's much easier to make them crush-proof. The larger the vessel, the more beefy it's going to have to be crush-proof. So the equipment back here, I think, goes into the water, and it's just submerged underwater. And what they do is, like the dive tank, the air tanks, they're in a container that would be crush-proof on its own. This way, they want to use all the space available within the air pocket of the sub for humans and maybe some of the smaller computer products, computer circuits that, let's be real, notebook computers, they're very small. I think you can even see in the back of the sub, behind this guy Stockton here, there's a window that's like plexiglass, and you see a lot of electronics back there, and he's got these computers here. He's got indicator lights here. This, in fact, may be the damn real-time monitoring, the RTM circuit, where you have a green here, and then there's a red light up here. But back here, there's more to this sub because there's a rounded end cap, and I think that's just electronics. And this, oh yeah, here's a picture of it right here. You can see this looks like it's open here, and there's electronics and stuff in the back here. Now, the problem is the battery current that this thing needs is pretty immense, and it is something similar to what you would use for an electric car or EV. Now right here I'm going to show you an article. It says Titanic submarine firm asked college students to devise more cost-efficient battery. Washington State University, they were able to come up with an end product $50,000 cheaper than what was already on the market. Now this article, basically, I read through it, and it said that the students were able to buy batteries that were like readily available and craft them into a custom-made battery pack for the sub. They are not saying whether or not this was actually used on Titan, but it was the same sub firm, this article claims, the Oceangate sub company, that had the students doing this. Based on how they improvised so much using like a video game controller to run the sub, I wouldn't be surprised if this was actually part of their plan, like let's have these engineering students come up with the battery system. Now, if you look on the internet, I do boating, as you may know, and I'm going to be doing some more boat videos soon. And I should be working on that actually instead of doing this video right now. But there are these damn packs. A boat uses a traditional like lead acid marine battery. There are cases that are similar to the lead acid battery, and you can like build the battery as a kit where you get all these cells. They are lithium ion cells, and you solder these cells together and put them into the case to make yourself a marine battery. Or a lot of people going off grid, it's not necessarily marine use, it's for people, they want a large capacity lithium ion battery. Now, here are a bunch of these lithium ion battery cells available right here on Amazon. Okay, so you need to solder these things together to build your custom pack. So my point being is, there are a lot of clues here as to what happened. The crackling noises from the aft of the sub. Now, what's back in the aft of the sub? That's where those batteries are stored with that other mechanical stuff. Now, as you're going down to those extreme depths, I am starting to wonder if maybe the casing on the batteries, because what they did is they took a big case and they put these cells together most likely to create the battery. So that case has to be crush proof as well as the sub. Now, I'm not sure what material these cases were made out of. Could they have been made with carbon fiber? Maybe a lower grade? Something made not as strong? I'm not sure about this. But I can tell you this much. These lithium batteries, I've had them for hobby use. As a matter of fact, I had a plane in one of my videos. I made a electric radio control plane, and it's powered by these lithium ion batteries. Now, when I bought them, the packs I use for radio control airplanes, they have to be very, very light. So they actually are kind of soft packs. They just have a foil plastic around the outside, and they are not hard or rigid. They do this to make the thing as light as possible. These batteries, however, are very dangerous. The radio control battery packs I have, when I was buying those, and I still do that stuff, they sell you a fire bag. It's a fireproof bag made out of like fiberglass or some kind of fireproof type material, even stronger than, more fireproof than fiberglass. You open it up and you can store the battery packs in this bag. You close it. This is to prevent your house from burning down or your garage in the event of what's called a lithium fire. Once these batteries start to burn, you cannot put the fire out. This bag would simply contain the fire and maybe starve it. I don't even know. I think it can burn even if they're putting water on it. That's the problem. Even without oxygen, it can just keep burning. So the bag would just contain the heat and try to prevent the fire from doing a lot of damage as it burns. Keep in mind, these are hobby type batteries that are only yay big. Okay? If you have a huge amount of cells, and I wouldn't put it past them or be surprised if they use these soft type lithium cells. They're cheaper, they don't have casing on them, they're going to put them in their own custom case. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if these cells, you see, the problem is you're dealing with electricity, and if these cells overload, or if there's some kind of internal where it's all soldered together, a lot of connections, the cells themselves have metal anodes and cathodes with the lithium like matting, those could get shorted. you have any kind of short, it generates heat from the electricity, and it's going to start what's called a lithium fire. That's how these cells catch on fire. The battery's power sparks up the fire. And you've probably heard in the news about many electric vehicles where people are driving them. Usually something weird happens. They have an accident and the battery gets damaged. It starts on fire. Once it's on fire, they can't put it out. They said fire departments have put so much water, they've used up all their water trying to put the car out. They just have to let it burn out. So this is very scary. If you want to buy an electric vehicle, people are doing like what I talked about earlier. Oh, black box it. No, don't worry about the technical details. Don't do your homework. Just drive it. Well, if you have an electric vehicle or you're buying one, I am saying that it's foolish to park that in a garage. Unless it's some kind of fireproofed parking garage that's made out of all concrete, or any electric vehicle in an area that you like sleep in, like if you have a house with a garage and the garage is like under your bedroom. If you have a garage outside where you have valuable stuff in it, and or another car, I would not park these damn EVs anywhere like that. The people are taking this stuff for granted and black boxing them. They should be away from anything combustible, parked on an open driveway, not near something that could catch on fire. Because there's been instances where these cars have started to spontaneously, something goes wrong with the battery and it starts shorting out and burning. Well, this is what I think happened with Titan. I think the crackling noises were the battery packs. At least one of them started with, what happened was the container the battery packs were in may have been compromised. I'm going to explain. Here's the zingers. The zingers coming up here. Say you have a big casement for this battery, right? And the casement was supposed to be made crush proof. You have electrical lines coming out of that casement, right? Even if the casement didn't crush, when that thing was descending, I'm wondering if seawater got into the battery case. Maybe where the wires go in, there was some kind of a problem. Maybe the wires got too hot. This could have even happened in a previous journey that they did. The wires got too hot and it compromised the seal. Might have melted something, the insulation, the seal around where they go into the waterproof battery box, crush proof box. Okay, if the box took on water as it was descending, there may have been extra room in that box for like keeping the batteries cool, to have air around them. There may have been some kind of a system like this. They may not have been just crammed full of batteries. They may have been a cylindrical shape or a round ball. There may have been a special shape to enable them to be crush proof, the casing to be crush proof. The batteries might not have taken up the whole case. So if water leaked in and filled the battery casing, started to fill with water, what that's going to do is it's going to make the sub heavier than it normally would have been. And not only heavier, but if they may have been calculating in, if the batteries were in like balls, so to speak, for the crush proof, they may have been calculating in the buoyancy of having these balls filled with air, or bells, diving bell, which would be like a ball, so to speak. They may have had that calculated in, that would be filled with air, and that would help the buoyancy of the sub. Okay, so what may have happened is, I'm thinking when they were descending, water got into the battery and the buoyancy was lost in that battery container. Then because you had heavier, it was filled with water and less buoyant, no air in there for buoyancy, the sub started traveling down quicker than usual, faster than usual. It was descending. That's exactly what that log showed. Now, when you put a battery in water, the fact is, each one of those cells, well, I think it came out, they're using some higher voltage, higher than a car battery, 12 volts. But my point being is, you could that could function underwater without, it's not just gonna, like if the water goes in there, it's not just gonna immediately short out and cause like a spark or whatever. Water conducts electricity, but it does it at a rate that has like a lot of resistance with it. So depending upon where your terminals are, how far apart they are, if the higher voltage terminals were spaced apart, they had insulated wire, you may have got some what's called like electrolytic action from the current going through the water. And that can also create hydrogen gas as well. But in any event, my point being is the batteries may still have been functioning. Say the water had gone into this bowl part way. Part of the batteries were above the water, part were below as it filled up. Eventually, what happened is the batteries started to short out as the water filled them up more. They were also under load from the motors and the equipment on the sub. So they obviously had a battery problem. In that chat log, when they said their battery seemed to have drained down. They think the circuit was dead. It was losing power unexpectedly, much quicker than they thought. So that's when they switched over to the other battery system. And they also, when they first heard the crackling noises, that could have been the damn lithium battery pack. It may have been catching on fire. It may have been causing those noises in the back. Now keep in mind, if you can hear the crackling noises in this thing, and they didn't say there was water coming into the sub. It sounds to me like the noises may have been coming right behind their capsule where the batteries were. Then when they switched, they said the noises had stopped. That was when the first battery pack seemed to be losing power. When they switched it over to another battery pack, depending upon how this thing was set up, it may have caused the damaged pack to get more current going to it again, depending on how it's set up, or the circuitry, depending upon how it's mixed. The crackling started again when they did that switch over. Maybe the other battery pack had some kind of damage to it as well. And when it was switched over, it created more of a load on it. That's a big clue right there. Right when they switched it, that's when they heard crackling again. So what I'm thinking is the batteries may have caused this whole thing to be stuck underwater and possibly implode. If you had a lithium fire going behind the sub and it caused the heat from that underwater and the way the sub was designed, it may have caused structural problems or stress in that back section of the sub, and that's attached probably, it's definitely attached to that titanium end cap for where the humans were in the capsule. That could have caused this whole thing to start to be compromised. And the acoustic system that picked up the early warning it may have been picking up sounds from that battery fire or compromised battery capsule behind them in the sub. It may have in fact been picking up those noises. If they were loud enough to hear, if the people heard crackling noises, that sounds to me like a lithium fire. Also, when they released the frame of the sub, I'm wondering too if the shock of releasing that frame, if that was somehow helping hold it together. When they released that frame, it may have created like a domino effect. You had a change in how the sub, it's not supposed to be this way. I know it's designed like the pressure capsule, not to have this happen, but let's be real, when you released that frame, you changed stresses on that capsule. And if the capsule, here's the problem, the capsule was only designed to go down to about the depths of Titanic, maybe just like maybe 1,000 feet more was like the crush limit. The subs the Navy used, and Dr. Ballard, from my understanding, they could go down 20,000 feet. So this thing was right, they were pushing the limits of what this could do to begin with. So this thing, and based on it being a cylindrical tube, that made it weaker, the design of this thing. But in fact, I would be very curious to know, and we're going to have to wait till the final reports come out, what the battery casing was made out of, how that was designed. And this would be a real zinger if that battery casing is what led to this whole thing. And everyone's blaming it on the carbon fiber design of the tube. Can you imagine that? And maybe the battery casing was made out of a metal. It might not have been made out of carbon fiber, and it wouldn't have had to fail. What all you would need is for the seal, you have to have wires coming out of the battery casings. The seal where those wires go in, that's all you needed to have fail initially. And the casement of the battery wouldn't have had to fail. Once you got a fire going in there, all bets are off. Once you have a shorted battery. And this would make a lot of sense because there must have been something on that sub that caused it to lose buoyancy for it to be diving down that quickly. The capsule itself where the people were, they were not saying we see water coming in. They were not saying any of that. So that capsule may have in fact been okay. And what caused this to happen was the battery system. They had a battery problem, lithium-ion battery problem. This is my speculation on this. And, I'm going off a log that, it's your call. This is my solely my opinion, my speculation. I'm not deeming this to be fact. I have to say this, of course, but and that guy who put this stuff up, he said the same thing. He's saying it's not confirmed, but we will just have to see. I geeked out on this. Everyone's asking me, when are you getting back to automotive videos? They're like, enough with the sub. Well, I geeked out on this thing. I'm going to be doing my car show live cast soon. Subscribers will be notified. Subscribe for free. And that's why I have this mic now. I got this set up doing the studio. But this is some crazy stuff. I was on the edge of my seat when this video came out. I had to do an update on this because I was thinking about what happened. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense. How this happened. There was a reason it was going down faster than expected. The whole thing has been a real tragedy, and I always try to piece together, I'm like, how the heck could this have happened? What's the cause behind this? I'm always thinking about stuff like this, and I wanted to put my theory out there. So we'll have to wait and see. This has been an update from New York Dan for the Ben's Products channel, and I'll probably see my subscribers in the Car Talk livecast that I'm going to be doing about cars, travel, Route 66, things like that, road trips, repairs. I'm an expert with car repair and technical stuff, so we're going to have a good live cast going with that coming up. So I'll see you guys then. All right.